starts now.
About that topic of changing team or company names and images, an earlier episode touched on the use of corporate monikers and their impact on people. This episode goes a little deeper into the muck, with equal parts sincerity and farce. Some names, nicknames, and other such monikers can be ugly, insulting, and even hateful, even if those who use them do so without malice. Using them, even in nice ways, doesn't make it any better. Polite racism is racism nonetheless. We have news that the Washington Redskins of the NFL are officially dropping their name. A new one will be announced at some later date, Red Skin. Now that one should have been obvious. And in fact it was to many people. Better late than never, one might say. The Edmonton Eskimos are most likely to very soon announce that they too will be looking for a new name for their football team. But let's exercise a bit of caution when approaching this topic. Where's the line between what should and what should not be considered acceptable? How evenly will people apply a consistent rationale of evaluation to whether or not a name or image is offensive enough to warrant change? Some names and images are clear-cut. Yet for some listeners, no doubt, parts of this discussion might seem absurd, even mocking. But make no mistake, if we are to rewrite names of things or places, we'd better have a clear conscience as to what is and what is not included. So let's continue with football names. Aside from Edmonton, is anything else from the CFL potentially hateful or disturbing to a culture, a people? While the name British Columbia Lions could hardly be offensive, what about the colors? The orange was chosen for its use by the Orange Order, members of which were original founders of the team. According to Wikipedia, the Orange Order sees itself as defending Protestant civil and religious liberties, while critics accuse the Orange Order of being sectarian, triumphalist, and supremacist. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Bombers. Although the Blue Bombers have an interesting story behind their name, which is actually associated with a boxer, a bomber is a killing machine, something used in war to effect death or terror. Even the Montreal Alouettes, although possibly referencing a bird, have made clear that the name honors a World War II air squadron, something designed and built for war. Should this be allowed? So that's a third of the entire CFL that might consider new names. Let's move on to the NFL. Aside from the obvious Redskins, is there anything else? The names Buccaneers and Raiders have historic associations with violence, pillage, and theft. The Bills are named after Buffalo Bill Cody, who, according to the online Britannica reference site, was noted for his effectiveness in killing Native Americans, or Indians as the term was used in his day, and upwards of 4,200 buffalo, an animal that became precariously close to being put on the endangered list. In total, we'd see 4 NFL teams. Can we find anything in the National Hockey League? Now, it's a good thing that the Hartford Whalers no longer exist, although they kind of do as the Carolina Hurricanes. That name could be said to have glorified the hunt and slaughter of the greatest mammals of the sea. But we do have a team moniker in Ottawa that is associated with one of the biggest empires of the world, that is featured by slavery, massacres, mutilation, torture, and death by public spectacle, the Roman Empire. The Ottawa Senators, while not evoking much more in its name than a stately chamber of elders, uses the imagery of ancient Rome. Should this be brought into question? The Columbus Blue Jackets reference the Civil War in the United States, one of the bloodiest on record. The Chicago Blackhawks may claim to be honoring First Nations, but do they have explicit consent by any Native representatives? The Winnipeg Jets clearly pay homage to military air forces, but again, these are things that are built to fight and cause death. Some Canadians view the term Canuck as a slight or an insult, so the Vancouver team might want to rethink things. Then we have the Las Vegas Golden Knights, a reference to the owner's military college days. The fun continues with Major League Baseball. I've talked in previous episode about the Cleveland Indians, so no point getting into the muck with them in this episode. Suffice to say that they are not totally immune to scrutiny. The Atlanta Braves, like the Blackhawks, claim to be honoring something or someone, so again, did they consult those people and get approval for its use? The Tampa Bay Rays, previously known with the word devil in the name, rebranded since their early days of play. Some people, it turned out, were in fact pretty darn upset about associating their team with something demonic or evil. Then let's look at the Washington Nationals. Certainly nothing about the logo or the name could disgust anyone, but what about those mascots? Characters designed to evoke reference to the War of Independence, something both gruesome and, for those of us north of the border, a historical bookmark to the very first refugees taken into Canada. The Texas Rangers also have some color in their past as well. The Porvenir Massacre is a particularly brutal part of their history, and not one that is endearingly glorified by Mexican Americans. And it doesn't stop with sports teams or company products. Dildo Newfoundland or Swastika Ontario would fall under this review. The historical meanings are different than what people associate with the names today, but certainly one could be offended by either of these place names. You see, what is worrying is how far this rationale extends. That this movement towards cleansing, one might call it, has serious potential for reaction, as opposed to thoughtful consideration. And such reaction could very well take the form of censorship, be it historical or sociological. What's worse is the increasing tendency, especially throughout social media, to not only judge and condemn anything from the past, but to attempt to erase it. Even my first name, Stephen, could be viewed as controversial with some. Its origin is ancient Greek, which directly translates into wreath or garland, and references Saint Stephen, the first Christian martyr, who was stoned to death, while also carrying an association to the specific wreath of thorns on the head of Christ during the time of his crucifixion. An honor and a part of faith for some, a significant part of historical narrative for others, and yet for even some others, a reference to one of history's most notorious episodes of brutal physical torture and psychological torment. For me, it was the first name of the $6 million man, and he was just plain cool. I read recently in a major Canadian news column that a sports team, and by extension any company's product, should actively look at changing its name or image if even one person whose culture or history who has association with it feels hurt or offended. If that's the case, and I don't think it should be, that's a whole lot of rethinking, branding, and redesigning, which, on the upside, I suppose, offers great opportunity for those of us in the marketing world. Visit stephenchristiansen.ca for more episodes. This podcast is available on premium streaming platforms including Anchor, Google, Apple, Spotify, and TuneIn. I'm Stephen Christiansen. Thanks for listening.
Production of Stephen Christensen. Podcast complete.